So much is going on right now regarding immigration. Certainly, we've seen President Joe Biden immediately signing executive orders and already seeing Donald Trump's appointed judges pushing back. Gabe Ortiz joins me, as he does often, senior political reporter at Daily Kos, who covers immigration and Latino issues. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Gabe, welcome back to the program.
Mike, good to talk to you as always.
So we've seen a lot going on, and yet we've also seen that there's a lot that's going to be hard to undo. And there's, a lot of concern also about how the Department of Homeland Security has been transformed and what's going on deep within it, and how it's going to be hard to really flesh out a lot of the people in the Trump administration, or in the former Trump in the Department of Homeland Security that were there from the Trump administration. Talk a little bit about the mess at the Department of Homeland Security.
Right. I think a lot of people especially people who voted for President Biden, had hoped that a change in leadership, could result in, some immediate changes at agencies like ICE and CBP. But especially, people in the immigration world have known that ICE and CBP, have been pretty awful agencies even before the Trump presidency. It's a very, deep and toxic culture at these agencies. And under the Trump administration, they really felt emboldened. They were unleashed. They felt unaccountable to no one, which is why they defied Congress on so much, because if the president wasn't going to hold them accountable, they were not afraid of anybody in Congress. So, it has been frustrating seeing ICE especially launch these really horrible attacks on Black immigrants in particular in these last couple of days, even with President Biden's orders. Because, again, this is an agency that just feels it is accountable to no one.
Well, it's, as you said, been like that since long before Donald Trump. It's the type of people who were attracted to that job, in many ways, the way we see certain element attracted to becoming police officers, and what's been the problem with some police departments, right? I mean, it's a certain racist element that is attracted to that job. And then you have a union as well. So you have that kind of pushback too. And there are things that President Biden needs to now do within a certain time frame, or else ICE will be able to really have a grip for some time to come. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. Well, regarding the union, there was an agreement that we're just finding out from the New York Times after a whistleblower report, which is that Ken Cuccinelli, who was unlawfully serving as acting DHS deputy under Trump, signed an agreement into place with the ICE union the day before Biden's inauguration. I mean, 11th hour, basically saying that the union for ICE agents has veto say over any policies that a Biden administration wants to implement. Under federal law, the government has 30 days to back out of any agreement like this. But from what I understand is that this agreement says that the ICE union has the option to fight, the government pulling out of this agreement. And if this policy stays in place, it would be for 8 years. And that number is not a coincidence. He didn't choose 5 years. He didn't choose 10 years. He chose the exact time that two Biden administrations, would take. It's
just diabolical. So Ken Cuccinelli, who is a hardliner who Donald Trump put in place, signs this union agreement. It's got a 30-day, the government has 30 days under federal law to cancel the agreement. So it's signed shortly before January 20th, right? So there's not that much. Right. There's not that much time left. And the union, which, of course, backed Donald Trump, can contest that. But and then it goes into effect, and it basically would undercut Biden's directives to ICE by putting in place these policy decisions for 8 years.
That's what it would claim to do if it were to be put in place and roll out. We have to remember is that the Trump administration lost many court cases. Remember in one DACA case over the fact that unlawfully appointed DHS officials signed policies into place, but because those officials were unlawfully installed, those policies were ruled by the courts to be invalid. So that's always a fallback for the Biden administration, is it can challenge this order in court and say, Ken Cuccinelli was unlawfully installed according to the GAO. So he has no right to be able to. That's right.
He was never confirmed by the Senate or anyone.
Right. And I mean, Ken Cuccinelli was so extreme and anti-immigrant and just, a very strange man all around that not even the Republican Senate would try to confirm him because they knew that it would fail. Yeah.
And Biden did on day one sign an executive order, several executive orders, certainly as well since then, to deal with immigration. But that, again, doesn't mean that these policies are gone. We saw already a Trump-appointed judge has issued an injunction putting a halt on one of the executive orders that would stop deportations. And Biden is also trying to stop construction of Trump's wall and getting resistance there, too.
Right. And, you mentioned the Texas order that put a halt on Biden's deportation moratorium. This was due to another policy that Ken Cuccinelli signed into place within the last weeks of the Trump administration. So there was a clear effort from Trump officials to try to implement as many roadblocks as possible for Biden. I was one of the people that, initially mocked this agreement that Ken Cuccinelli signed into place, the one that ended up halting the deportation moratorium. So even if they were put in place by, completely unqualified appointees, they're still having really devastating effects, as we're seeing right now.
Right. And this will be fought in court. It was a Trump-appointed judge who did this. There were other Trump-appointed judges all the way up. So that's always a problem.
Who himself admitted that he knew nothing about immigration law, this particular Texas judge. But he, made a decision that, overruled the discretion that the federal government has.
Right. And even if this is overturned, it will have affected many lives under Joe Biden's administration, even as he moved to stop these deportations. And I saw some tweet the other day, even under Joe Biden, deportations are escalating but it was like a right winger or something, sort of trying to make it was like he wasn't doing what he said he was going to do. But he is, in fact, under attack by previous Trump directives.
And, one thing to remember is that, even though there is a court order in place, ICE, the agency itself, has total discretion when it comes to deportations. It can say, we're not going to prioritize this person for deportation. It can stop deportation flights. It can release people from detention. What we have, I think, is a very deliberate action from the ICE agency. ICE, I think, is testing the Biden administration and seeing how far it can possibly go in defying the president's orders.
And we saw the Senate and Republicans in the Senate, I should say, trying to hold up the nomination of Alexander Mayorkas. This is a pioneering, history-making choice as Homeland Security chief, a Latino man and someone who is committed to stopping these reckless and horrible immigration policies. And we saw senators in the Republican Party putting a hold on it, not allowing him to go through. Even in the end, the majority of Republicans in the Senate voted against putting him in that place. Now he's in, and he's going to face this daunting task of changing many of these agencies within Homeland Security. And obviously, just from what you're talking about with ICE, he really has his hands full in trying to do that.
I think so. And it's such a stark difference to have him be, in DHS now, because he's also going to be heading the task force for reunifying separated families. So, to go from Chad Wolf, another unlawfully appointed Trump loyalist, who was one of the architects of family separation. I mean, he helped draft up what would eventually become the memo that Kirstjen Nielsen signed, to now go to Alejandro Mayorkas, who is going to head this task force. And he's explicitly said that the government will use its full force and all the agencies of the administration in order to correct this human rights disaster. So it'll be quite a change, and he definitely has a whole lot in his plate coming up.
And he clearly has been told by the Republican Party that they're going to be fighting against him in getting that work done. And ICE alone is going to be a difficult nut to crack. You also mentioned the family reunification and what needs to be done there. But again, we have a very complicated problem to solve, because the Trump administration not only didn't keep records, but many of these children have been placed in different places, in foster homes. It's going to be a difficult thing to do.
And I think what you just said is really one of the biggest impediments to all this, is that the administration, the Trump administration, did this so recklessly. There was no record keeping, no way to know who was tied to who. Hundreds of parents deported while their children were still here in the United States. So, this is what the Biden administration now is looking at in trying to fix. I know one specific demand that advocates had been making of the Biden administration was for families to be reunited here in the United States. I think what was encouraging to me is that even though that was not explicitly said in the task force order and the announcement, the task force does have instructions to look at that as a recommendation, as well as what other kind of services families might need, like mental health care, for example. So I think this is a real opportunity, especially with the new DHS secretary, for the federal government to begin to correct this wrong, and not just to correct it, but bring some justice to these families. There's a real opportunity to make sure that they have permanent protections here, and that they receive any sort of compensation that they need for this crime.
How are immigration advocates and activists interacting with the administration? Obviously, a lot of promises were made. Obviously, some things are very thorny. Now finding out, for example, that the Trump administration had put a lot of things in place that were going to be difficult. Biden said his next round of immigration action is to review Trump policies, not necessarily rescind them. We saw some immigration advocates really concerned about that. What are you hearing about that?
I think that's right. Yesterday was the second sort of, big day of immigration orders. We got the family reunification task force, but there was anger from advocates because Biden did order reviews of policies, but not necessarily, rescissions. And it's caused some anger because, yes, these are complicated policies, and I think the administration wants to be careful in winding down certain policies like Remain in Mexico, which has sent thousands of asylum seekers to wait in Mexico for their immigration court dates. But there are families that are stuck right now, and the longer they remain stuck, the longer they remain vulnerable to cartel violence, to extortion, to sexual violence. I mean, there's been hundreds of documented cases of violence against asylum seekers. So I think, that is a big frustration right now, to see the orders that we've had so far is a huge step. But at the same time, it's the people in the program who advocates are really concerned for because, delays of 30 days, of 60 days, that could mean a life or death situation.
There is also a lawsuit that was filed by Ken Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, regarding the deportations. And the woman who survived the El Paso shootings helped law enforcement in the investigation, was just deported for traffic tickets. Talk about that particular issue and what needs to be done beyond an executive order to help people like this woman.
Yeah, and this is one of those cases of ICE being completely reckless and intentionally cruel. This is somebody who survived the white supremacist mass shooting in El Paso. She bravely stepped forward to help law enforcement as a witness. That should have made her eligible for what's called a U visa, which is something that's available to undocumented victims of violent crime who then assist police or law enforcement. And instead, ICE targeted this woman and deported her on Friday, and just to add even more pain to this over traffic tickets, as you said. So not only is she suffering the trauma of that terror attack, she now has the trauma of a deportation on top of her. Again, as I said earlier, we have to keep, repeating the fact that ICE has every power, even with this court order in place. ICE has every power to stop deportations. ICE has every power to stop those planes from taking off. And this is something that we really need to pressure our legislators and the president on, because, we could plead night and day with Donald Trump. We would not get anything. But with Joe Biden, we can pressure our leaders to get a hold of ICE, because, again, I think these days are going to be really critical, because ICE is seeing if they're going to get an administration that's going to fight them and get them in check, or is just going to throw up their hands. And we cannot let that happen after the last 4 years.
And with the Democrats now in control of the Senate, there really needs to be legislation, and some will not be able to be passed without the filibuster, but there could be some opportunities to have Republicans aboard, and no matter what, we need to put people on the record.
Exactly. And I think these recent court orders, the recent actions from ICE, it makes the case that in the end, what families need are permanent protections. They need a path to legalization and a path to citizenship, so that, we don't see the sort of injustice and horrific actions that we've been seeing in the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Gabe, it's always great to have you on the program, and so important to hear about how this is all going in the first couple of weeks. I look forward to speaking to you again and seeing where things are then.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike.
Gabe Ortiz is senior political reporter at Daily Kos. Follow him on Twitter at Tusk81. We're back in a couple of minutes.
This is the Michelangelo Signorile Show on SiriusXM.